In addition to our own reporting, this program contains excerpts from a documentary made by a British production company, which aired in the UK 3 weeks ago. Some of the individuals who appeared in that documentary received compensation for their participation. No payment was made for any of the interviews conducted by Martin Bashir or ABC News.
Tonight, it started with his own words. Words that made the world take notice. Really take notice.
Why can't you share your bed?
Was it an innocent, loving friendship or something much darker? As the trial of the century gears up, Martin Bashir returns to the secret world of Michael Jackson, exploring his pattern of unusual friendships with much younger boys that began more than 20 years ago. You'll hear from his detractors.
As soon as they appear to be a little bit more into puberty,
He just moves on to the next little special friend.
And his defenders.
Michael Jackson is not a child molester.
You'll hear from boys who say nothing improper ever happened between them.
He's like the most best person I ever met.
And boys now grown up who say something did.
I had phone sex with Jacko, is what the press wrote.
Plus, the child stars Jackson befriended, and the boy behind a reported $25 million payoff.
I think he wanted to sleep with my nephew from the moment he saw him.
Now, a new look at Neverland, with the man whose documentary ignited a firestorm. A 2-hour special that picks up where Living with Michael Jackson left off 2 years ago, as Martin Bashir takes a closer look at Michael Jackson's secret world.
Over 2 years ago, I started making a documentary about Michael Jackson.
About these,
I saw some extraordinary things.
about this one,
We went shopping.
about that, this one, and these. Yeah, we got these, right?
We raced go-karts. I met his children.
It's okay, just get this off.
Oh, please don't cry, baby.
And his baby. And then I went back to Neverland.
Do you come out here on your own?
Yeah.
What happened over the next few hours would forever change the lives of everyone who was there.
Why can't you share your bed? But the most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone. You say, you can have my bed if you want. Sleep in it. I'll sleep on the floor. It's yours. Always give the best to the company, you know. Like to him, I said, because he was going to sleep on the floor. I said, no, you sleep in the bed. I'll sleep on the floor.
But haven't you got a spare room or a spare house here where he could have stayed?
Yeah, but no, yes, we have guest units, but whenever kids come here, they always want to stay with me,
I could never have foreseen what consequences that encounter would have. The young boy I interviewed that day would later allege that Michael Jackson abused him. I've had to ask myself, could his allegations of what happened after that day be true? So I went back to the beginning. I was about to enter the secret world of Michael Jackson. Once again, this would be a journey into the surprising, the unusual, and the bizarre. It's a world in which Michael Jackson has shared his wealth, his home, sometimes even his bedroom, with much younger boys. Were these relationships innocent, as Jackson and many of the boys say, or were some of them criminal, as at least 2 boys have alleged? It began when he was little more than a boy himself.
He really didn't have, and I know that everybody knows this, he really didn't have much of a childhood.
Michael says his childhood was scarred by the pressures of early stardom and the close attentions of his violent father, Joe.
You don't have to ever take any of them over your knee or use any other methods of disciplining this lively group you've got here?
He was a disciplinarian. And when I say disciplinarian, I mean if he felt you did something wrong, then of course he would spank you.
When I interviewed Michael Jackson, he told me his father had made his life desperately unhappy.
How often would he beat you?
Too much.
Would he only use a belt?
Why do you do this to me? No, more than a belt. When he would catch me, oh my God, it was bad.
I have a way, you know.
What about Michael? If Michael always does right?
Strict, why do we have to do this, and we can't do that? But that's part of growing up.
According to Jackson, he didn't want to grow up. He craved the childhood he'd never had. Michael Jackson was reluctant to join the adult world. When I asked Jackson about dating Tatum O'Neal, he told me that at the time, the idea of sex had terrified him.
She told me to go over and lie on the bed, and I did. I laid on the bed, and she slowly walked over, and she touched the button of my shirt to open it, and I took my hands like this, and I wouldn't let them down. And she just walked away. She knew I was too shy for it. That's what happened.
Did you not feel tempted at all? You just felt frightened.
I was frightened. I was afraid.
In Tatum O'Neal's recent book, she denies trying to seduce Jackson. Whatever his experience with girls, he would soon begin a series of friendships with boys much younger than himself. Jackson's sister says all these relationships were entirely innocent.
He's always had lots of friends, all ages, and then he had younger kids that were friends, because you have to remember, Michael was so loved by everybody, which he still is, in the world, that everybody wanted to be around him.
He feels very strongly that he missed out on his childhood. And one of the ways that he feels that he can recapture his youth is by associating with, young kids.
Terry George claims he was one of those boys.
When I was around about the age of 13, I was a little bit cheeky, but I think I was a little bit naive as well, looking back.
Terry George says he was 13 and a keen collector of celebrity interviews when he met Michael in Leeds in the north of England. For the rest of the Jacksons, it was just another stop on their 1979 European tour. But for Michael, says Terry George, it was a chance to make a new friend.
What is your name? Michael Jackson.
Michael would tour all over the world. There were little boys everywhere that would come to the hotels.
And what is your job?
I'm a singer.
I didn't really mingle with other people, and I didn't really have a lot of friends then.
Determined to interview his idol, Terry says he found out where the Jacksons were staying. Then, armed with Michael's hotel room number and a tape recorder, he simply knocked on his door.
What do you like most? Things that you like?
I like kids a lot.
Wow. It's certainly a lot smaller than it ever was. It's feels like it's been totally restructured. Michael said, "Who is it?" And I said, "My name's Terry, I've come to do an interview." And then he opened the door and said, he looked a bit shocked to see me, really. He's probably looking at this level. I was down here somewhere. I came into the room and I was sat on this bed here. The gap seemed much bigger as well because I had my tape recorder down there.
Terry George says that at the end of the interview, he and Michael Jackson swapped phone numbers.
Him giving me his number and asking for mine didn't really feel strange at all. It was great. It was a thrill. It was, I was happy to be in touch with a celebrity.
After the tour left Britain, Terry George says that Michael Jackson started calling 2 or 3 times a week, and they had friendly conversations about their lives.
His calls came quite late at night, normally anything from 11 in the evening, 10 in the evening, right through to 5 o'clock in the morning on some occasions.
And then, one night, he says Michael made a call that Terry has never forgotten.
I had phone sex with Jacko, is what the press wrote.
I met with Terry George to hear his account of what really happened that night.
He spoke about masturbation. About him masturbating. Did I masturbate? I never saw it coming. It wasn't something I expected. It just came out of the blue, really. He said, "Would you believe that I'm doing it now?" And let me hear him on the telephone, and I could hear it.
And what did you think he meant by that?
Well, I knew what he meant by that, because he was talking about it. He was talking about masturbation. I did feel uncomfortable. I can remember feeling uncomfortable. I felt awkward.
What are your thoughts when you put the phone down?
I thought that I didn't react as he wanted me to react. And I thought that perhaps he would never call me again, or I wouldn't hear from him again. In hindsight, looking back at it now, I know that type of conversation probably should never have happened, you know, and it probably wasn't natural.
Terry George says there were no more sexual conversations. In time, the two lost touch. Terry George's friendship with Michael Jackson was over. A source close to the Jackson camp said, Terry George's story isn't true. In the past, he has sold his story to the press. All this is an old, unsubstantiated accusation. Some people who've investigated Michael Jackson say he ultimately rejects many of his young friends.
Michael Jackson changes his phone numbers. He's not available on the telephone anymore.
As soon as they appear to be a little bit more into puberty or that they have gotten their first facial hair,
he just moves on to the next little special friend.
But soon Michael would want to take one of his friends out before America's press on a double date with one of the world's most beautiful women.
When we return, the public's first look at an unusual threesome, including a child star half Michael Jackson's age.
He basically had Brooke Shields there as his date, but he had Emmanuel, you know, sort of in his arms.
Next.
For the superstar who calls himself Peter Pan, the transition from child sensation to adult pop idol wasn't easy.
I feel like I want to rock. I'm most comfortable on stage than any place in the world. Being around, you know, everyday people and stuff, I feel strange. I do.
He went through this phase in his life where he became extremely shy and totally changed. Totally changed his demeanor. He didn't want to see people, and he just became a totally different person.
Michael Jackson told me about this difficult period in his life.
Then one cousin would always, you know, look this to me when he see me, like, when I pop my pimples. Like, I would just go to the bedroom and cry, you know.
Is it true that your father used to say you had a fat nose?
Yeah.
What did he say? What did he actually say?
God, your nose is big. You didn't get it from me.
What does that do to someone who's going through adolescence?
You want to die. You want to die. And on top of it, you got to go on stage in the spotlight in front of hundreds of thousands of people and just, God, it's hard. I would have been happier wearing a mask.
At 21, Jackson was about to become a fully fledged superstar. But a friendship with a boy was about to startle the world. This video, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, helped launch Michael's solo career. And he looks like a man who's breaking free.
And when you watch Michael, you'd like to think that he was enjoying it too. In fact, it was one of the darkest times of Michael Jackson's life.
In the midst of his private pain, Jackson was in public demand. And music's brightest new star was about to go on a date with Brooke Shields, America's most desirable young woman. But in his private life, Michael's new best friend was the tiny child star, Emmanuel Lewis.
Regardless of how old we were in real life, we're not going to get older. That was just our friend of mine. We were Peter Pan.
The 3-foot star was invited down to the set of Jackson's new video, Thriller, and met Michael while he was having his makeup done.
And he's like, "Are you afraid of me?" You know? Of course not. You're Michael Jackson.
But according to a Jackson biographer, some members of Jackson's family were becoming concerned about how the world would view this friendship.
The two of them are rolling around in the grass and playing games with each other.
They would do all the Thriller moves together and all. It's so cute, so adorable. Do all those little things together, and no, there were no questions about it because it was a wonderful friendship.
By 1984, Michael's second album, Thriller, was well on its way to being the best seller of all time. He was nominated for 12 Grammy Awards and was all set to be crowned King of Pop. But choosing his date for the ceremony, Jackson faced a dilemma. Whom to take?
I recall Brooke being over to the house and asking Michael if she could go with him to the awards.
Michael was, a little bit lukewarm on that. He liked her, but he liked Emmanuel better.
He didn't want to say no, so he had 2 dates.
But here, in a scene from Fox Broadcasting's Michael Jackson's Private Home Movies, just before he swept the board at the Grammys, he's seen arriving at the ceremony with Brooke on one arm and Emmanuel on the other.
I didn't know the magnitude of how great this moment was going to be in history. You just didn't know.
The extraordinary spectacle was seen around the world.
You can imagine the surprise and shock that everybody felt that Michael Jackson and Brooke Shields were a couple with Emmanuel Lewis.
He basically had Brooke Shields there as his date, but he had Emmanuel, sort of in his arms.
One look at this threesome, and some people wondered about Jackson's relationships. People wanted to know why Michael Jackson was hanging round with a boy less than half his age, but according to Emmanuel, this was just an innocent friendship.
I mean, all we did was watch, comedy or cartoons. Could anything negative happen between the two of us? The answer to that question, your question, is hell no.
When Emmanuel Lewis suddenly started showing up in public with Michael Jackson, that was as if the water had burst over the dam. After that, the pattern began that we always saw Michael with a young male friend at his side, almost always.
Life was about to get even stranger in Michael Jackson's secret world.
Up next, with look-alike outfits, the mini Michaels begin to multiply.
The glove, the spin,
the little coats, the fedora hats,
the pants that were too short, and the sequin socks.
When we return. That was then. But what happened when the boys grew up?
Jimmy Safechuck, like so many others that I have come across, just simply got too old.
When Michael Jackson's secret world returns, after this from our ABC stations.
Next Thursday, a Diane...
Well, isn't this a thriller?
Michael Jackson was now a megastar, attracting plaudits from presidents.
I'm very, very honored. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
His relationship with boys looked like just one more eccentricity from a man who was becoming famous for being odd.
There's always been so many eccentric things going on around Michael Jackson that almost lost in the background were these little boys that were always there.
What people didn't know was that Jackson had been splashing cash on extravagant gifts for his new young friend and his family. One of the first boys to benefit from Michael's newfound wealth was the son of a Californian garbage man, 10-year-old Jimmy Safechuck. The young actor was picked by Jackson to star in this glossy commercial, designed specifically to appeal to kids, in which Michael's image became indelibly linked to children, and Jimmy appeared as his clone.
Well, the interesting thing about Jimmy Safechuck is that he was actually the first mini Michael.
Jackson was so enchanted by his new mini Michael, he took Jimmy on the road to tour his next album, Bad. The boy and Jackson even dressed in identical outfits.
I don't know whose idea it was to start dressing these boys like Michael.
Looking like Michael became part of the pattern for some of Jackson's young friends.
The glove, the spin,
the little coats, the fedora hats,
the pants that were too short, and the sequin socks.
It starts to make you wonder, who's making them dress that way? Do they want to dress that way, or does Michael insist that they dress that way?
One of the dancers who toured with Michael Jackson says the family didn't approve when Jackson reportedly took Jimmy and his family on a shopping spree.
The whole family, even Joseph, they didn't like it. They didn't think it was right.
The family was aghast. You buy them a little outfit to wear. You take them on a trip. That's fine. But you buy them a house? You buy them 2 luxury automobiles?
When you put enough out there, it looks a certain way. However, at the same time, when you're innocent, you don't think anything of it. It's just a gift, and it's like, enjoy it, have fun.
I saw the Safechucks lifestyle change. I read their credit report. I saw what they did for a living before Michael Jackson came into their life. Then I saw the way they were living afterward. And it wasn't just this child appearing in one video with Michael Jackson that gave them all that money.
Diamond says there might have been another explanation, such as a business loan. Jimmy Safechuck has not alleged any wrongdoing by Jackson. Supporters of Jackson say his extravagance towards some of these boys just reflects his widespread generosity.
I've known Michael Jackson, and I just know how he is with people and how he is with families of the people that, you know, come into his life. I mean, he's been generous to a fault.
But just like previous boys in Michael's life, Jimmy Safechuck's days as a favourite were numbered. With his family, he went to visit his old friend Michael. But 2 former Michael Jackson employees say the star didn't even turn up.
Set up the table like Michael is going to be there, you know, at dinner. And we did that for the whole weekend, but she said between you and I...
Yeah, he was not coming, yeah.
He was not coming.
Yeah, he was in Los Angeles.
Just don't tell them that he's not coming, that's all.
That's all, yeah.
Jimmy Safechuck, like so many others that I have come across, just simply got too old.
Too old.
Too old.
For his record-buying public, Jackson was portrayed as a heterosexual predator. With the video for his latest hit, The Way You Make Me Feel.
The feeling and the mood was just kind of sexy. I think with me strutting in this tight dress and, you know, Michael chasing after me. That was the first video where the public saw Michael for the first time as a believable heterosexual male.
He actually looks, you know, hot and sexy and sexual, and there's a chemistry between him and Tatiana.
But in private, Michael Jackson continued to have friendships with boys, which sometimes included their whole families.
The way he does it is to just make them feel that he just adores them and loves them all.
One of Michael Jackson's young friends claims that Jackson stayed at his home and won the trust of the entire family.
He adopted my family. He started becoming more and more attached to my family as a whole rather than just me individually. This is the first letter that I ever got from him.
This man, we'll call him Jeffrey, had been 9 when he sent Jackson a poem. The star began writing.
Hi. How's my best little friend in the whole world doing?
Years later, when Jeffrey was 15, he says Jackson called him out of the blue and invited him to his hideout in LA.
My parents dropped me off at his, his assistant's house. And so, we went in the car and drove to this secret spot. I would get butterflies in my stomach. I mean, it was unbelievable. We parked down here, and then there's an entrance there where it enables you to go up to the room there. And so that's what we did.
That night, he says they watched TV and played video games. But he claims that eventually, Jackson befriended his entire family.
We opened up our family to him, and he was kind of another member of the family. He got to experience what a family atmosphere was about. And I think that isn't something that he ever had himself.
Jeffrey says that several times, one of the most famous men in the world drove out of Los Angeles to stay in his spare room.
He would arrive around 6 o'clock. The lights would all be dimmed or off. Then we'd put on a video or two and watch the video of him. You'd be surprised at how much Michael Jackson stuff Michael was actually interested in watching.
Even for a huge fan of Michael Jackson, he says his visits could be tiresome.
I mean, our whole family catered to him. If he wanted to go to bed, well, Michael needs to go to bed. He had his breathing exercises. You know, he has to take a certain pill at a certain time. You know, and it just, I mean, the whole thing, it was the Michael Jackson show.
Like Jimmy Safechuck and Emmanuel Lewis, Jeffrey says that nothing sexual happened between him and Michael Jackson. They were just good friends.
When we come back, what attracted Michael Jackson to megastar Macaulay Culkin?
Michael Jackson marveled. Look at the pouty smile. Look at those lips. He always pointed to people. Look at his lips. I love the pouty smile.
Next.
Tonight on Nightline,
when it comes to original instant.
Corey Feldman was one of Michael Jackson's best-known young friends. The star of dozens of Hollywood blockbusters as a child, he was delighted to become part of Jackson's inner circle. It was a relationship that began at the height of Michael Jackson's fame. Riding the success of Thriller, he was idolized by millions, Corey Feldman among them.
Blink your eyes.
Feldman had starred in Gremlins, and later Stand By Me.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
Loony, loony, loony.
And The Lost Boys.
Good night, bloodsucker.
By 13, he was already a teen idol himself. Feldman finally got his chance to meet Jackson on the set of the 80s smash hit movie, The Goonies. Michael Jackson called him late that night. Feldman says they spoke for 2 hours, and a friendship between a man and a boy began. Corey Feldman says that attention from a superstar like Jackson was hugely important to him. He became obsessed with the star, dancing like him, even dressing like him. At the time, he says Jackson was the most important person in his life. But when I met him earlier this month, he claimed that there was a disturbing side to their relationship. Jackson suggested he would sleep over in his home only if he had pornographic magazines there. Feldman also says he noticed a book on Jackson's coffee table. The book contained pictures of naked men and women. He said Jackson sat down showing him the pictures. He said the book was focused on venereal diseases and genitalia. Feldman has stood up for Jackson on many occasions since that time, most recently in 2003.
Help these kids.
However, the two had fallen out for good a few years earlier, and he's recently re-evaluated their relationship. Feldman says that he was never molested by Jackson. Like many other children before him, as Corey got older, he says he had to leave Michael Jackson's secret world. Corey Feldman was subpoenaed to testify at Jackson's molestation trial. He's now named as a witness for both the prosecution and the defense. By 1987, Jackson was the world's most popular entertainer. His personal wealth was estimated at $100 million. But the 29-year-old superstar was still living at home with his parents. He decided to buy a place of his own to finally create his private world.
By creating Neverland, Michael was able to live his fantasy of being Peter Pan.
Peter Pan, to me, represents something that's very special in my heart. You know, he represents youth, childhood, never growing up, magic, flying, everything I think that children and wonderment and magic, what it's all about. And to me, I just have never, ever grown out of loving that or thinking that is very special.
Do you identify with him?
Totally.
You don't want to grow up?
No, I am Peter Pan.
Are you not your Michael Jackson?
I'm Peter Pan in my heart.
He wanted to put the whole Disney thing in our house, and my mother wouldn't let him, so he says, I'm going to buy this property, I'm going to do it what I want to do.
I spent many weeks at Neverland with Michael Jackson, and in many ways it was a magical place. Children's music filled the air. There was a fairground and a zoo, even its own railway line. When I was there, a group of children was invited to play and enjoy all of the amenities free of charge.
Can I have one too? Okay, we're good. She called it first and then you called it. Oh, me. Okay, here we go. Sorry.
In 1988, Michael Jackson began building Neverland, his private children's paradise. I visited Neverland with Michael, and he said it was there to allow him to enjoy the childhood he never had.
Right. Michael Jackson versus Martin Bashir in the go-kart land of Neverland.
Michael Jackson invited me go-karting on his specially built track. His childlike enthusiasm was obvious.
Hey, he's cheating! He's cheating!
At Christmas 1990, he met someone he wanted to share his paradise with. And that meant not just sharing his home, but sharing his bedroom. When Michael saw the movie Home Alone at Christmas, he asked his housekeeper to contact its young star, Macaulay Culkin.
Home Alone.
Michael saw the movie and he asked Norma to have him brought over and spend some time at the ranch.
Some of the Neverland staff thought Michael was clearly taken by the 10-year-old child star, his most high-profile young friend to date.
Why you like Macaulay? Why? The kid is cute.
The kid was cute at the time.
Yeah.
Very, very cute, yeah.
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 Michael Jackson marveled. Look at the pouty smile. Look at those lips. He always pointed to people, look at his lips. I love the pouty smile.
Michael gave Macaulay Culkin the run of his new home.
They had food fights and a lot of, great fun.
Michael often filmed his new best friend. They're shown here in this clip from Fox Broadcasting's Michael Jackson's Private Home Movies, playing together as if they're both children.
There are video games, there are animals, there are trains.
They play all day long and they will watch movies.
Anything and everything you want, and it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And now Michael didn't have to be parted from his young friend day or night. But according to Macaulay and Michael Jackson, nothing improper or sexual ever took place.
People, that's really what they kind of don't get, is that it's, he has this bedroom, but at the same time, it's 2 stories. But, yeah, it wasn't anything, weird. It wasn't anything we thought about it. We go to the movies, and we do this, we do that, and it's like, okay, you plop down, you go to sleep, you wake up, it's like, it was just kind of what friends do. I've slept in the same bed as, a bunch of my friends. It's kind of just what happens,
I have slept in the bed with many children. I sleep in the bed with all of them. When Macaulay Culkin were little, Kieran Culkin would sleep on this side, Macaulay Culkin's on this side, his sister's in there. We're all just jamming the bed. And we wake up like dawn and go in the hot air balloon. We have the footage. I have all that footage.
But is that right, Michael?
It's very right. It's very loving. That's what the world needs now. More love.
From now on, it would become normal for some of Michael Jackson's friends to share his bedroom.
When we return, the boy who imitated Michael Jackson traveled with him and accused him of molesting him. Claims of a slow and steady seduction, according to his uncle.
I hate to use the word love, but in Michael's mind, perhaps that's what it was, love at first sight.
Next. The boy who first accused Michael Jackson, who settled his claim for a reported $25 million. His uncle now speaks out.
I think he wanted to sleep with my nephew from the moment he saw him.
When Michael Jackson's Secret World returns after this from our ABC stations.
In addition to our own reporting, this program contains excerpts from a documentary made by a British production company, which aired in the UK 3 weeks ago. Some of the individuals who appeared in that documentary received compensation for their participation. No payment was made for any of the interviews conducted by Martin Bashir or ABC News.
tonight. You thought you'd heard the whole story, but you've never seen it laid out like this. Deep inside the secret world of Michael Jackson. From the explosive documentary by Martin Bashir that ignited a worldwide firestorm, and the shocking words about boys in his bed.
It's very loving. That's what the world needs now.
To the trial of the century, we'll tell both sides of the story.
They know he's not child molester. All that stuff's crap.
The psychiatrist asked him what was the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life. And he said, meeting Michael Jackson.
For the first time, you'll hear portions of graphic tapes made to a psychiatrist by the first boy to accuse the pop star. Plus, Macaulay Culkin, Lisa Marie Presley, and the most recent accusations from the boy who used to be at Jackson's side. As Martin Bashir guides you through Michael Jackson's secret world.
Michael Jackson had built Neverland, his Peter Pan paradise. Macaulay Culkin had come to stay. And other children would also share Michael Jackson's bedroom. And for the moment, many parents were happy to let them.
Because it's Michael Jackson and he's a celebrity, people's judgment seems to fly out the window, particularly these parents.
Despite some raised eyebrows, no one publicly had seriously questioned Jackson's relationship with boys. But he was about to meet the boy who'd change his fate forever. By 1993, Jackson's career had gone stratospheric. At the age of just 35, he was now one of the richest, most powerful men on the planet. His friendships with young boys had set him on a collision course. And Michael's next young favourite would bring the megastar crashing to the ground in full public view.
The psychiatrist asked him what was the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life. And he said, meeting Michael Jackson.
Ray Chandler is the one close member of the Chandler family who isn't bound by a confidentiality agreement following his nephew's claims of sexual abuse in 1993. He did not witness the events that follow, but he says they were described to him by the boy and his father. Obsessed with Michael Jackson, 4 years before they met, the boy already wanted to look and dance just like Michael.
And it was inevitable that Michael was going to meet some boy whose family was then going to try to bring him down. It had to happen.
The 12-year-old boy came from a broken home, and like many of Michael's previous friends, was unusually good-looking.
Very smooth skin, very fine, smooth features.
You would pass him in the street and you would have to stop and look at him. He was so beautiful.
Ray Chandler says, to begin with, there was nothing remarkable about the friendship. Michael exchanged numbers and, as usual, began calling the boy.
Here's a 12-year-old boy taking the phone and going into his bedroom and closing the door. Something he had never done before. He hadn't dated any girls. This is something, you expect that two young teenagers to take the phone in the room,
Then, he says, Michael invited the family to Neverland.
What was significant was the ride to Neverland. Michael's in the front with the chauffeur. Sitting on Michael's lap is a young boy about 12 years old. On their way up to Neverland, and my nephew testified about this, Michael was caressing this boy in a clearly sensual way, kissing him on the cheeks, on the neck, caressing him. It was overtly sexual.
So why was he doing it?
I believe it was a test. The purpose is, look, is this child going to be repulsed? Is the mother going to say, turn this limousine home, take me home? Or is she going to be polite and go through the weekend but never go back again?
The boy, his sister and his mother joined Michael Jackson on an all-expenses-paid trip to Las Vegas. At this point, the boy says, the sleepovers began.
Michael rented the very, very scary movie, The Exorcist.
So he played and the boy was scared. So Michael suggested that he just spend the night in his room rather than sleep alone.
The boy would later tell a psychiatrist brought in to evaluate his claims everything that he said followed. The sessions were recorded. I listened to those tapes with the boy's uncle, Ray Chandler. Tonight you can hear some of those tapes for the very first time. If the boy is telling the truth, they detail a slow and steady seduction that took place over months.
I think he wanted to sleep with my nephew from the moment he saw him. It was, I hate to use the word love, but in Michael's mind, perhaps that's what it was, love at first sight.
When his mother found out her son had slept in Jackson's bedroom, the boy says she challenged the star.
Got my mom feeling so guilty that she just broke down in tears and said, okay,
He told her that she was putting barricades in their relationship and it was all about love and trust and she should trust him. There was nothing wrong with it. It was all very innocent. But he cried and he made, as my nephew described it, he said that, he made my mom feel so guilty that she cried too.
Why did Michael Jackson cry?
I think it's because crying works.
It's often not going on. How are you dead? Children in the village.
Ray Chandler says that the next day, Michael Jackson gave the mother an expensive bracelet. According to the boy, Michael Jackson had not just got close to him, the world's most famous pop star had moved in with his family.
Michael spent 30 straight nights in a row sleeping in the same bed.
Michael's chauffeur would drop Michael off at the house at night and pick him up in the morning.
Michael would go back and spend yet another night.
They'd have dinner, they'd watch TV, they'd play video games, they'd do homework.
It's such a bizarre, odd thing to think that this man who has millions and millions and millions of dollars would want to bunk with a young boy.
Yeah, they were, just a regular family. I mean, regular is probably not the right word.
The taped interview with the boy describes how he says the relationship turned sexual.
I think one night we were sleeping in the bed. I think it was in Neverland, and he just leaned over and hugged me.
Just a little hug. Nothing. That's it. Hug.
He hugged me. I thought nothing of it.
But then the hug would get a little longer.
He graduated to kissing me for a longer amount of time. We're on the lips. Yes.
And then a peck on the cheek goodnight would become a peck on the lips.
A peck on the lips, then to put his tongue in my mouth.
And then you'd have a sort of an embracing hug with a long kiss on the lips.
Then, in the spring of 1993, Michael Jackson took the boy to Monaco, where he alleges things got much more serious. His claims about Michael Jackson's secret world were about to become very public indeed.
When we return, even more shocking tapes in the boy's own words, and what his uncle says happened on an exotic trip behind closed doors.
We're locked together in that suite in Monaco for 2 days. Things really escalated seriously at that point.
Next.
In spring 1993, Michael took this boy and his family to Monaco as VIP guests at the World Music Awards. These clips were especially shot for the ceremony. Onlookers were shocked to see the boy on Michael's lap. Yet the star was aware of being filmed and didn't look like a man with anything to hide. But if the boy is telling the truth, behind the scenes there was already a new and secret side to their relationship. Later, in his statements to police and social workers, he would claim it was now that things got much more serious.
We were alone and we took a bath together.
They got undressed in front of each other. They saw each other naked. They took a bath together. And the masturbation began. They were locked together in that suite in Monaco for 2 days. Things really escalated seriously at that point.
Some weeks later, the boy's father confronted his son.
And there was one question, only one question the father asked him. Did Michael Jackson touch your penis? He just said yes. Yes, yeah, he did touch my penis.
During his psychiatry sessions, the boy would make even more detailed and graphic allegations.
And one time he was masturbating, instead of masturbating with his mouth. And like if I didn't do it, then I didn't love him.
They would masturbate themselves in front of each other. There was frequent oral sex on the part of Michael performing oral sex on the boy.
Soon it would be announced to the world that the star who said he loved children was now being accused of abusing one of them.
Search warrants raided Jackson's ranch north of Santa Barbara. Entertainer Michael Jackson is the subject of a criminal investigation using to say whether Jackson is a suspect or a victim.
Bill Dworin was the lead investigator on the case in Los Angeles.
You go into Mr. Jackson's bedroom. It's a very large room, a lot of stuffed animals, a lot of things that would be attractive to children. It wasn't a surprise because I went through many people's homes and found the same type of items, although on a lesser scale. One item that we found in the locked filing cabinet was a book showing nude boys in nude poses. It's not illegal. It's a book that I've seized in other investigations. If it's a person who has this material, who has a sexual interest in children, it becomes child erotica.
As more damaging details emerged, it was a testing time for Jackson. But he hadn't seen anything yet.
It was December 20th, 1993, and the police came knocking at the door of Neverland with a warrant to photograph Michael Jackson's private parts.
The boy had drawn and described distinctive markings on Jackson's genitals.
Based upon what the boy has said, we obtained a search warrant, not only for Jackson's residences, but also for Jackson himself.
They wanted to match up the boy's rendition to what the reality was.
They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis.
Your front private parts, your back private parts, your side private parts.
It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life.
The most telling mark occurred when Michael Jackson actually lifted his penis, as if in an aroused state.
When things get aroused, you see the other side, and those were the descriptions that he gave.
I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent.
According to the lead investigator, the boy's description matched.
We corroborated what the boy has said, and we were able to corroborate that through the photograph of Mr. Jackson.
Did it prove that he had actually engaged in sexual molestation of this boy? No. Absent another adult eyewitness, what would have?
Jackson's attorneys have repeatedly denied the boy's allegations, calling him a liar and his family greedy extortionists. But Michael Jackson and his legal team decided to end his ordeal. He paid the family a massive settlement, in total reported to be around $25 million.
The resolution of this case is in no way an admission of guilt by Michael Jackson.
With the boy's claims settled, the criminal case collapsed, and Jackson was never charged. When I interviewed Jackson, I asked him about what happened in 1993. The questions upset him deeply.
What was that like when you first heard the allegations that were being made against you?
It was shocking, and I'm not allowed to talk about this by way of law. So,
But how did you feel about what was being said? I'm not asking you to talk about what was said.
I was shocked because God knows in my heart how much I adore children.
But isn't that precisely the problem, that when you actually invite children into your bed, you never know what's going to happen?
But when you say bed, you're thinking sexual. They make that sexual. It's not sexual. But we're going to sleep. I tuck them in. I put a little music on, and to a little storytelling. I read a book. It's very sweet. Put the fireplace on. Give them hot milk. We have little cookies. It's very charming. Very sweet.
Sure.
It's what the whole world should do.
You reached a financial settlement with the family.
Yeah. I don't want to do a long, drawn-out thing on TV like OJ and all that stupid stuff. and it wouldn't look right. I just said, look, get this over with. I want to go on with my life. It's just ridiculous. I've had enough. Go.
As part of the settlement, the family could never discuss their relationship with Jackson in public again.
I mean, this was nothing to Michael Jackson in terms of his finances, but it was everything in terms of his life, because it gave him a chance to, start anew and make some decisions.
A few months later, he would get married.
Next, the ill-fated marriage, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley. What did she think about the young boys in his life? When we return.
Friday, it's a list.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Jackson and Miss Lisa Presley Jackson.
The first key decision Michael made after his disastrous PR exposure when he was accused of molestation in 1993 was to get married. Just 4 months after he paid millions to the boy who accused him of being a pedophile, Michael Jackson married Elvis Presley's daughter, Lisa Marie. But that wasn't the end of Michael Jackson's association with boys. The appearance of the next boy in Michael's life showed it would take more than an accusation to end the superstar's friendships with young boys. Just weeks after his marriage, 13-year-old Frank Cassio became the new boy in Michael's life, much to the shock of the police.
He was traveling with 2 boys, brothers from New Jersey. We were concerned for the children's safety. We contacted the parents of the children, who believed that Jackson did not do anything improper.
Michael had got to know Frank as a baby when he used to stay at the hotel the boy's father managed in Manhattan. Frank Cassio says Jackson's love for children is sincere and not at all sexual.
When you're innocent and you're doing everything that is perfectly normal and right, I'm not going to deviate from that. What am I doing that's wrong?
Jackson was now a 35-year-old married man, but he still saw nothing wrong with boys sleeping in his room.
Lisa was strong-minded and had a real sense of public relations coming from her family, and she realized that the appearances of impropriety that were caused by Michael's relationships with these young boys were bound to do him in again. She felt that he should never be around boys ever again, ever. So she was adamant about that, and he was just as adamant that she doesn't get to tell him what to do.
Less than 2 years after their wedding, the couple split. But even if Lisa Marie didn't make it till death us do part, Frank remains close to the star.
He's somebody that Michael trusts, and he's decided to make his life with Michael Jackson.
One of the most puzzling things in Michael Jackson's secret world is the behavior of children's parents, particularly the mothers who send their young boys to Neverland. Sandra Sutherland is a former private investigator. She was employed by the accuser's attorney back in 1993 to check out the boy's story.
Neverland, to me, epitomized what in the law is called an attractive nuisance. There are pedophiles that I've come across who own a game store or a toy shop or a kid's bookshop, places that lure kids and their parents. Neverland, of course, had a zoo. It had a video arcade. It had a private movie theatre. It had Michael Jackson, the idol of children all over the world. It was the perfect, ultimate lure.
So it wasn't an innocent playground for the recreation of children?
Well, I think a lot of children did have an innocent recreational experience there, and Michael was very generous to some sick kids. But no, it was more than that, though, I think.
When Sandra Sutherland began investigating, she says she met a number of mothers who let their children sleep alone with Michael Jackson.
What did being Michael Jackson's favourite involve for that child?
Well, he got to sleep with Michael in the main house, and the parents and siblings slept in a guest house.
So the deal was, if you're Michael's special child, you sleep
in his room?
Yes.
Sutherland says there was sometimes a bizarre competition between mothers to win Michael's attention for their sons.
There were parents whose children were having what they thought was an absolutely wonderful experience, being Michael's special friend, and they also gradually came to realise that their child's time in the sun was very limited. There would come a time after a year or 2 or 3 when they would be supplanted by a younger child, and there was a certain discontent among a couple of mothers when they realised that their time was almost up.
During her investigations, Sandra Sutherland says she also came across a maid at Neverland whose 9-year-old son was an occasional visitor. Sutherland says she was reluctant to speak out, but eventually she did tell her story.
She was very worried that her son was likely to be a victim if he hadn't been already.
It recently emerged that Michael Jackson paid the boy $2 million without admitting any wrongdoing. Jackson's current attorney said it was a mistake to settle any of these prior claims because they were baseless. The boy and his mother are now on the prosecution witness list in the current case.
The pizza.
And Jackson first survived pedophile accusations a decade ago. They cost the star far more than the $25 million payout. In recent years, his record sales have plummeted, and so has his personal fortune. In the meantime, Michael became a father. I spent time with his children during the making of my documentary. And I spent time with his baby, the day after he'd been dangled out of a window in Berlin.
Here's the bottle.
It's okay, just get this off.
Ow! Oh, please don't try to blanket. Oh,
What's his name?
okay. Prince Michael II, we call him Blanket.
Call him Blanket.
Yeah. Blanket, blanket, blanket.
Why do you call him Blanket?
Because it's an expression I use with my family and my employees. I say, you should blanket me. I mean, you should blanket her with something, meaning like a blanket is a blessing. It's a way of showing love and caring.
But throughout this period, Michael Jackson has carried on befriending young boys.
If this was the guy next door, the minute he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm sleeping with little boys around the block," he'd be tarred and feathered.
But Michael Jackson isn't the guy next door. He's a 46-year-old superstar who continued to have boys sleeping over.
When I stepped on his lap, he wasn't like touching me on the parts. I was just sleeping on him, and he was just hugging me, doing nothing to me.
9-year-old Juju met Jackson the summer before last and spent the night at Neverland with his brother and other children. He's also joined Jackson on trips to Toys R Us.
He's like the most best person I ever met because like he'll buy anything you want, anything.
Juju's family has known Jackson for 9 years, since his older brother Ahmed first became one of Michael's young friends.
When I asked my parents if we could spend the night, they were like, yeah, sure, and they just let us. They know he's not child molester, all that stuff is crap.
I never felt any weird thing about him. I will never believe what they say. When I told my friends, they were like surprised, but they thought he was gay, but he really wasn't. So I told them. I'm not gonna be your friend no more if you keep saying that.
Juju and his brother say nothing sexual ever happened between them and Jackson. The current accusations have done nothing to shake this family's faith in him.
I know he's been accused 2 times already, but I never believed it. And I trust Michael. I'm always going to be beside him.
One of those accusers would soon pose the greatest threat yet to Michael Jackson's freedom. It all began over 2 years ago when I first met the so-called King of Pop.
You're actually saying that you climbed that tree?
Yeah.
How far do you climb up it?
All the way to that kind of spot up there, kind of like a deck where it's like a bed. I love climbing trees. I think it's my favorite thing. Having water balloon fights and climbing trees. I think those two are my favorite.
Don't you prefer making love or going to a concert, or you really mean that you prefer climbing trees and having a balloon fight?
Yeah, water balloon fight.
And you prefer that to anything else?
Well, as my pastime, fun. You know, can't compare it to performing. But other people play football, basketball. I like to climb trees.
We were filming my documentary, Living with Michael Jackson. During that time, we met this 12-year-old boy. Neither I nor the young boy had any idea that our brief encounter would lead to the indictment of one of the world's most famous entertainers for the crime of molestation. Before the interview began, Jackson took the boy off for a private chat, according to the boy's grand jury testimony reported by ABC News. The boy said Michael asked him if he wanted to be an actor, and that this was his audition. Jackson wanted him to say good things about him, grab his hand, and act like Michael was his father.
What is it about Michael that makes him connect so well with children? What is it?
Because he's really a child at heart. He acts just like a child. He knows how a child is. He knows what a child thinks.
Were your parents happy that you were here with Michael?
Yeah, my mom was all very, very, very happy. And I know they're happy because I was happy.
Did they come with you?
Yeah, most of the time, but I wasn't really with my parents. I was mainly with Michael.
But they were happy that you were here?
Yeah. There was one night I stood in there, I asked him if I could stay in the bedroom. And he let me stay in the bedroom. And I was like, Michael, you can sleep on the bed. And he was like, no, you sleep on the bed, sleep on the bed. We're like, no.
The boy stunned the world by exposing how Jackson, the superstar, was still openly inviting young boys into his bedroom, although Jackson says he slept on the floor.
And then he finally said, okay, if you love me, you sleep on the bed. I was like, oh, man.
When I heard those words, if you love me, it sent chills down my spine because those are classic pedophile words. If you love me, you will do this.
Appropriate for a man.
Psychiatrist Carol Lieberman was so alarmed by what she claimed were clear signs of abuse that she filed a complaint with the Santa Barbara authorities, a complaint that was later dismissed.
Is leaning against Michael's shoulder, looking up with these puppy dog eyes. He's just so submissive to Michael. You can tell how much control Michael has over him.
Why can't you share your bed? The most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone.
What outraged many people was hearing Jackson talk about sharing his bed with young boys. After all, this was the same man who in 1993 paid more than $25 million to a boy who claimed the superstar abused him.
But is it really appropriate for a 44-year-old man to share a bedroom with a child who is not related to him at all?
That's a beautiful thing.
That's not a worrying thing?
Why should it be worrying? Who's the criminal? Who's Jack the Ripper in the room? This is a guy trying to help heal a child. I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor.
But even though Jackson's relationship with this new boy raised some of the same old questions, no one today, not the boy, not the police, not the prosecutors, claims that any abuse had occurred at the time of my interview. The alleged molestation would come later.
When you say bed, you're thinking sexual. They make that sexual. It's not sexual. But we're going to sleep. I tucked them in. I put a little music on.
All I remember is the sinking feeling in my gut that this is going to be trouble.
When we return, the explosive fallout from Martin Bashir's questions.
That's when Michael Jackson was revealed to all of us as the guy who thought it was just lovely for men to sleep with boys.
But even tougher questions were just starting.
You're fundamentally saying that this cancer victim and this entire family are liars.
Yes.
next.
February 2003, my documentary aired. The reaction was immediate. Who was this boy with Michael Jackson, and why was he sharing his bedroom? Later the question would become, was that boy molested by Michael Jackson? Jackson had met the boy 2.5 years earlier. The 10-year-old was in the hospital, fighting for his life, riddled with cancer. He made a wish.
The TV in the room was on, and Michael Jackson was on. And he looked out, he said, "Can I meet Michael Jackson?" I said, "Yes, you could do that."
At that time, the boy's family thought he may only have weeks to live.
He had a 18-pound tumor in his stomach, and they'd had to take one of his kidneys out, spleen out, and the cancer was spreading all over his lung and liver.
He wanted to meet Michael Jackson in the worst way. He gave him his phone number. He got those late-night phone calls. He ultimately got that invitation to Neverland. He and his family went to Neverland, and they were wowed.
Miraculously, after meeting Jackson, the boy eventually recovered. And, like other boys, he would end up in the star's bedroom.
Piercing eyes, $1 million smile. He fits the Michael Jackson pattern.
Like some of Jackson's other young friends, this boy, from a troubled home with limited resources, was lavished with attention and gifts. And he says there was something else: pornography. The boy says he and his younger brother looked at porn on the internet with Michael Jackson. He says they were in Jackson's bedroom with the superstar's friend Frank Tyson, whom we met earlier in this broadcast when he was one of Jackson's young friends years before. ABC News consultant Joe Tacopina represents Frank Tyson.
Let me read you something that the accuser says happened on one of his very first visits to Neverland. He says, "Frank started pushing the computer, and I didn't know what he was doing, and he put it on like pictures of girls. He then says one of those girls had her shirt up and was exposing her breasts. Was your client ever involved in showing the accuser pornography?"
Absolutely not.
And then he finally said, "Okay, if you love me, you sleep on the bed." I was like, "Oh, man." And so I finally slept on the bed. But it was fun that night.
I slept on the floor.
When my film aired in England, it sparked a firestorm. Jackson's picture holding hands with the boy was flashed across the world.
Clearly the catalyst for this whole saga was the airing of the video.
Former sex crimes prosecutor Wendy Murphy.
That's when Michael Jackson was revealed to all of us as the guy who thought it was just lovely for men to sleep with boys. And it put Michael Jackson in a position of having to defend himself.
Prosecutors say that just before the film aired in the US, Jackson's team, desperate to control the damage, whisked the boy and his family to this exclusive 5-star resort in Miami. It was here, the boy says, that for the first time the superstar gave him wine, calling it Jesus juice.
If the jury believes that Michael Jackson gave this child alcohol, they're going to be much more inclined to believe all the evidence. Because a man who gives alcohol to a child, especially a child with a compromised immune system, is not someone who respects children. That's the type of person who's more likely to molest them. Because he's not caring about them, he's trying to cause them harm.
On the private plane home, the boy says Jackson gave him wine again, in soda cans. The defense says Jackson never drank with the boy.
Millions of viewers got a peek into the very bizarre life of Michael Jackson.
The fallout from Michael Jackson's shocking revelations on nationwide TV.
What people are saying about his sleepover parties.
Well, I think there needs to be an investigation, and I think...
Meanwhile, the question on everyone's lips, what was Michael Jackson's relationship with the young boy? Jackson's answer came 2 weeks later. In a TV special to rebut my documentary, the boy's mother defended the star in a written statement read by Maury Povich.
The relationship that Michael has with my 3 children is a beautiful, loving, father, sons, and daughter one. To my children and me, Michael is a part of our family.
The
mother now says that statement and several others were made under duress. And then the unthinkable. Just when the whole world was watching, the boy claims Jackson sexually abused him twice, putting his hand down the boy's pants and rubbing his private area. His younger brother claims he witnessed 2 other occasions of abuse when his brother was sleeping. Jackson's camp says the timing of the alleged molestation is absurd.
After all the attention's been brought on that relationship, he waits till after the controversy, after the hysteria, to then begin some sort of a sexual relationship with him. That defies common sense.
To some extent, I think this is the weakness of the prosecution's case. On the other hand, this is probably why Michael Jackson chose that period of time to molest the child. He knew he would be insulated from prosecution because what law enforcement official would ever take on a case where the child who's accusing him only 2 weeks earlier was in a video claiming Michael Jackson had never touched him and was the best guy on the planet?
The mother says she was never told about the abuse. But one night, in a 4 a.m. phone call from Michael Jackson's bedroom, she says her son confided that he and Jackson had been drinking Jesus juice.
When she heard about the liquor and her son drinking wine, that was the trigger that changed everything in her mind as to whether Michael Jackson was or wasn't their best friend.
The mother says Neverland had become a nightmare. She says they were threatened by Jackson aides, not allowed to leave the property, and that she and her family were being held hostage.
During the period of time when they're allegedly held hostage, we have receipts that will show the mother and her teenage daughter getting manicures and pedicures, shopping at stores. I mean, it's laughable.
Jackson's supporters say they are confident they'll be able to destroy the credibility of the accuser's family at trial. You're fundamentally saying that this cancer victim and this entire family are liars.
Yes. If you want to attribute a reason or a motive, I don't think it's hard to find one. It's financial. Michael Jackson has a bullseye on his back. He's a one-man lotto ticket.
What evidence do you have that this is a shakedown?
Who do they go to first? A lawyer, not the police. You see, if my child, and I believe my child was sexually abused by someone, I'm not looking for a personal injury lawyer. I'm looking for a police officer or a baseball bat.
Nobody shook Michael Jackson down then, and no one has shaken Michael Jackson down now.
Larry Feldman represents the family. He also represented the alleged victim in 1993, who settled for around $25 million. A coincidence? The Jackson camp doesn't think so.
The mother drives this train. It's a mother who exercises enormous control over these boys, who is claimed not to be after the money, but all she wants is money, who, instead of going to the police when she believed these allegations had merit, went to the same attorney that got a $20 million settlement for Michael Jackson 10 years earlier.
It takes a lot to believe that a mother who cares about her son, she may not be the best parent on the planet, but she cares about her son, and she would force him to lie about being molested? I mean, where are those kinds of parents? I've never encountered such a case where a mother would be so cruel to a child she loves that she would force him to falsely believe that he was assaulted.
The mother says this time there will be no out-of-court settlement, that she doesn't want, quote, the devil's money.
We took him to Children's Services and we took him to the district attorney's office. And that's unfair to attack some child that there is some ulterior motive behind going through this criminal case. I don't think that people really realize how painful it is for some young person to have to deal with this.
I can assure you that within a very short period of time, there will be charges filed against Mr. Jackson, multiple counts.
And so it has come to this, the so-called trial of the century.
The prosecution is alleging a variety of charges, many charges, including not just child molestation, but providing alcohol to a minor, intimidation of a witness, kidnapping, extortion.
For the first time, the megastar will be forced to face his accuser in court.
In a sense, the prosecution is prepared to put on a very full picture of not a one-time incident with Michael Jackson fondling the child in his home, but a rather extensive story of not only how Michael Jackson came to meet the family, how he selected them, how he groomed the child, how he became suspicious that he was going to be found out, and the steps that he took to try to silence this family.
Recently, Jackson proclaimed his innocence, casting himself as the victim.
Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again. I love my community, and I have great faith in our justice system. Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court. I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen. I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told.
I've prosecuted hundreds of child sex cases and never had the kind of corroborative evidence the prosecution has here. And I'm talking about fingerprints on pornography, Michael Jackson giving the child alcohol. This is stuff that the jury's going to find hard to dismiss, and more importantly, it's literally going to transform the air in the courtroom. Because all of a sudden, Michael Jackson isn't that nice guy, celebrity, superstar.
Michael continued with children because he was innocent. The people that accused him know they're lying. Why would a boy nurse someone else back to health and then turn around and even when they're sick, this kid was sick. He was dying. Why would he molest him? Would you? Nobody would. A sick child? No.
And his mother, in fact, has said, I know for sure, 100%, he's not guilty because he loves children. He would never do this. I mean, the truth is, those people don't know. They weren't there. Child abuse doesn't happen in front of witnesses. They really can't be in a position to know. And mothers love their sons. I'm sure Mrs. Jackson loves her son, and she wants desperately to believe that it's not true.
Michael Jackson's representatives declined to comment on tonight's broadcast, saying that they are prohibited by the judge's gag order. I was nearing the end of my journey into Michael Jackson's secret world, and what to think at the end of it all. I'd met some of Jackson's young friends, Terry George, who said Jackson talked to him about masturbation during a phone call.
I felt a little bit disgusted, but, you know, this was Michael Jackson.
And we've seen a number of boys who said that nothing untoward ever happened to them.
He's not child molester, all that stuff's crap.
I haven't seen Michael Jackson since my documentary aired. The next time I'll see him will be in court, when his secret world will be judged.
He should know better. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's done a lot to himself. He's his own worst enemy when it comes to some of his decisions. But he's not a child molester.
So do you think Michael Jackson is a predatory paedophile?
Yes, it's a hard word, a hard term. But I think he is, yes.
In my heart, I truly believe that he will be vindicated.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.